Hello everyone, we're going to do another top-down video today. This time we're going to be looking at an antique that I am babysitting for my good friend Damocles, and he has been kind enough to send over this lovely Nihonto for us. So this is a Wakizashi, and we can talk about Wakizashi very briefly while I'm pulling this out. So Wakizashi are the companion sword of the katana, and they show up in they really kick off in the Edo period, but they show up a little bit earlier in the Muromachi. So back then, you have different types of swords for either warriors or the upper echelons of society or the civilians, and you pretty much had different swords based on size. So you have the long sword or the medium sword or the short sword. So you have daito, shoto, or tanto. And what your primary sword was typically a tachi, although eventually it became the uchi katana. And what your companion sword would look like could be different. So you could have a dagger-sized blade, or you could have something thrust through your belt, and originally it was kind of short and it may not have had a Tsuba on it, but as we got closer and closer to the Edo period, warriors tended to like bigger and bigger blades. So by the time the Edo actually rolls around and the Uchikatana takes over the role of the Tachi, the companion sword, even though before it could mean anything from a dagger all the way up to an uchikatana size, the official dress code of the samurai in a civilian setting, it becomes apparent that at that point you have the long uchikatana and then the shorter wakizashi, and the wakizashi at that point is established as this kind of in-between size, starting anywhere smaller than 60 centimeters in blade length, all the way down to about 30 centimeters or so in blade length. So once upon a time, wakizashi could refer perhaps to many different types of blade, but the companion sword really becomes established right as the Muromachi period ends, the Warring Sengoku period ends. This is an Edo period blade, and I don't know much about it. It is believed to be mume, and so we're going to go through all of the we're just going to catalog it. We're just going to review what it is today. I'm not a specialist in Japanese swords at all, so if you are a Nihonto collector and you are watching this, feel free to add in anything that you spot that I may have missed. Correct me on anything that I've gotten wrong. I'm going to try to use some of the Japanese vocabulary to earn some really cool Nihonto nerd points, and we can learn a little bit along the way. So here is it in its neat Koshirae. We'll just do a quick overview, starting at the end cap here, Kashira, going along the Tsuka here. Got the Fuchi, Tsuba, the Sago wrap, the little Koshikatana here, and the Saya. It's in pretty decent condition, all things considered. So this first thing we'll take note is the cool texturing here on the Saya. So I forget the name of this, so feel free to immediately tell me what this is called in the comments. But this particular neat speckling of the Saya is produced, I believe, using charcoal and then lacquered over. To me, this does strike me as one of the easier types to maintain compared to a very highly polished Saya, which will quickly show any signs of damage. And the nice horn piece here to hold our Sageo in place. And both the types of wrap seem to be of a matching set. And we can see some ray skin underneath Samagawa. and we have just a single Manuki pin holding it in place. So the first two things I'm going to do, I'm going to measure the total length and then the total weight. So we're going to see some of the tools of my trade. Total length is coming in at right at 650 millimeters, so 65 centimeters in total length in full Koshirae. And we're going to weigh it. So I don't know why it's not on grams right now. Here, I'll tear it out to 0. And 904 grams in total weight. Okay. Everyone wants to see what's under the hood. So we're going to just pull the blade out real fast. I'm going to try and do this as gently as possible. There we go. All right. We'll put the Saya down for a second and give everyone the chance to see what type of pretty blade that we have underneath. Since I have the blade out right now, I'll take the opportunity to weigh it again. My scale zeroes out. Put it down. And it comes in at 681 outside of the Saya. This is called the omosa, the weight. And you know what? We'll weigh the Saya by itself too. The Saya with the associated wrap. 223 grams for just the Saya. You can see that the end of the Saya does not have any associated. It doesn't look like it has a horn finish, and instead it is just wood all the way through. Let me see if I can get a little bit better light there. Let's see if we can see some of the motifs that we have going on. So I'm going to move the scale off for a second. We'll put our blade down. Carefully. And let's see if we can pull out our little Kogatana. As usual, these are very tightly fit. So the little companion blade that we have on the side. It has a little bit of gilding here on the back. It's rubbed off a little bit and still seems to boast a keen edge. I'm not going to test it, but from what I can see, it still appears to be sharp. And I'm trying to see what motif we have here. The little bits of gold seems to have rubbed off. I really do like the texture that we have here on the rest of it. I'm trying to see if this is copper. From the corner that I can see that's been rubbed shiny, it looks like it may have a copper base over which gold has been laid. And I think that these might be Chinese lion dogs, but I'm not sure. Let's see if we can keep it in focus. These are very well rendered, as you would expect something of of an actual antique production. It's very hard to find things of this caliber in modern reproductions, unfortunately. But on antiques, you can certainly get very nice and fancy um, bits and bobs. So I'll just slide this back into place. And you see as it gets in, it just fits very securely fit. It's like something from I don't even know, not IKEA, but just a very high end production where it's perfectly matched for the socket here in the wooden saya. Um, we'll take a quick. Well, let's take some measurements of the blade before we get everything completely naked. So, do we want to take measurements of the blade first or second? I guess we can look at everything before we take it apart. So, just like this companion blade, it appears that the habaki is copper and has had gold over it. It's possible that it's brass and has patinaed, but I don't think so because this is a copper color and the rest of it is yellow. The yellow is not as bright as I'd usually expect gold to be, so it's possible that this is not pure gold and instead a gold alloy. Again, there's different types of gold, so this might be a rosy gold where it has copper in the mix. But based on how it is making contact with the sai here and rubbing out, that's not the way that I usually see patina on copper alloy like bronze or brass. We'll get a better sense when we take everything apart. So let's see how the hamon looks. It's a pretty bright hamon. This is a little bit of turbulence. What's the expression? Midori hamon, I believe, is the expression. And a medium size sake here at the end. So they use the expression in Japanese. You either have something small, which is ko, or something medium, which is chu, or something large, which is o. So in this case, this would be considered a medium sized tip, so chu sake. And not anything particularly unusual about the cross-sectional geometry. So shinogi zakuri geometry with the shinogi ji cross section here and a typical peaked mune or spine here on the back. So this is very typical for what you would find in the Edo period. Let's take actually one of the things I'd like to do is I'd like to see where its point of balance is. And rather than just balance it on my finger, what I will try to do is see if I can get it to balance using a little loop. So I can measure the point of balance by putting a loop around the spine and seeing which direction it tips from. Oh, there we go. Up, just slightly forward. Right about here. Perfect. I can make my mark on the paper. We'll measure that really quickly. So that is 8 centimeters from the guard. Okay. So let's see, what else do we want to measure. We can just measure. Um, let's take it apart really quickly, and then we can do additional measurements. So I have my handy little tool for pulling out the Mikugi. One Manuki pen. Okay, here we are. So let's take a closer look at the scuff first. So it's got an interesting little motif here. This kind of repeats all over the place. So we have what appears to be a mouse, possibly a rat, and it's pursuing some type of plant. I believe that this is a persimmon. The Mikugi is a little bit difficult to figure out here. To me, this looks like a bull. I'm pretty sure that this is the tail, and I'm pretty sure that those are horns here. So this is either a bull or a buffalo or some type of cattle. So we have a little bit of a mix and match, and you have the same thing on the other side. So we have one on each side, and it's a little bit of a mix and match. It's possible that this is late enough period that even if this is, earlier mid-Edo blade, that this is a much later Koshirae, and they don't come from a matching set. I've been told that having multiple seppa could also be indicative of that, so that's possible. The Tsuba appears to be made of bronze, or possibly brass. It has little bits that have been gilded. It's not showing much of any signs of patina, which is nice. I guess it's possible that it's copper, although this isn't as ruddy as I'm used to copper being. So on this side, we only have two little elements of the dragon or what have you going into a cloud, maybe a little dragon's whisker or mustache. And then on this side, the dragon is showing up a little bit more. We've got the tail, we've got the arm here, and then we've got his whole face over here coming out with his horn, his antlers, his little snout, and then his prominent whiskers. And it looks like every time that there's whiskers showing, they've highlighted those in gold. I rather like that. It's kind of cool. It doesn't seem to show much of any modifications to the blade hole, sometimes you can see there's a whole art to how many punches are used in order to adjust the aperture so that it fits snugly on the blade. In this case, there seems to be almost no modification done. Now we're going to do a couple of measurements on the blade. The first thing I want to do is measure what degree of sori or curvature the blade has. So to do that, I'm going to use the line that I've already put on this paper here, and I'm going to measure from the very tippy tip to the muni machi here. So the little notch where the habaki meets the spine. And then we're going to measure the highest degree of curvature. And going from right about here, the lines in behind it are throwing me off. So let's go like this so I don't look at weird lines. So it looks like right in the middle. So this is exhibiting what we would call probably tori zori, or middle curvature. And I would say this comes in at about 9 millimeters or 0.9 centimeters of sori. Let's take a couple other measurements. So we have the nagasa, which is the same distance along that line. And this comes in at 445 millimeters. And if memory serves, that puts this in the size of a chu wakizashi. So it's not a really large one. It's not an old wakizashi. It's not a really short one. It's not a cool wakizashi. This is right smack in the middle of what you'd expect wakizashi blade length to be. The nagasa is going to be 10 point, or rather, I'm sorry, 135 millimeters. Nakago, I'm sorry, did I say Nagasa a second time? I'm not sure. And if we want to look just at the kaseki here, so from the yokote line, the geometric line, to the tip is the kaseki. And I get about 29 millimeters for the kaseki. And we already said it was a chu kaseki. It's not particularly big, not particularly massive. Now I have some digital calipers here, and I can use those to measure points along the blade. So one of the things that we measure is the profile taper, and we measure the width here at the base, which is called the motohaba, and we can measure the base near the kisaki, which is called the sakihaba. So here at the base, the motohaba is 29.1. And at the sakihaba, I get 19.7. The other thing that we can measure is the distal taper, so the thickness, which is called the kasane. So once again, we can measure it at the spine where it connects to the nakago, which is the moto kasane. So I get 6.8, and the Saki Kasane. Hang on a second. Hang on. Do it right at the Yokote. All right, 6.8 and 4.3. For fun, we'll also measure the Tsuba size. So the Tsuba comes in at 68 millimeters along the major axis and 60, all right, 65 along the minor axis. 68, 60, 65. And let's see how thick we are. Comes in at a thickness of 4.6 millimeters thick. And just for fun, let's weigh it as well. Weighing it off camera, it comes in at 131 grams. So unfortunately, this blade, as we can see, usually these blades are signed on by the smith on the side of the that would be shown edge up like a katana. It is not on that side, and even on the tachi side, there is no signature. So this is considered a mume blade. It is an unsigned wakizashi, and I do not have enough knowledge to know what characteristics. We can't see too much in the grain structure in the hada. It's got, nice, tight, but otherwise unremarkable hada. It's, as we mentioned before, it's got a pretty but otherwise hamon that I'm not going to be able to identify as belonging to a specific school. If anyone does recognize this work as belonging from a specific region or a specific school, please feel free to share. In earlier periods, for older koto blades, to me, it's a lot easier to give indications as to where they came from, the history behind them, what trends you're able to see. During the Edo period, there's a lot of experimentation, a lot of copying, a lot of reproducing of things, and it becomes a lot more difficult to tell what's going on. So I'd have a very difficult time dating this blade and knowing from whence it came. To me, this looks like a perfectly serviceable blade of a mid-level person who wanted to have one. Again, wakizashi were available even to non-samurai, so non-aristocrats and non-warriors. It's possible that this was owned by a well-to-do merchant or otherwise businessman who needed to protect themselves. Okay, so this was real cool. I'm glad that we're able to see a part of history. This is a sword that's possible is 200 years old. It's possible that it's all the way 400 years old, but I'm not sure exactly the age on this one. It's always neat to take a look at a really pretty antique. Thank you, Damocles, for letting us see this beautiful wakizashi today. We'll check back in with another sword on a different day. Thanks. Bye.